Your stories don't define you. How you tell them will. Hi, I'm Sarah Elkins, your host and chief storymaker of Elkins Consulting. Many of my clients reach out to me because they're in transition. Their children are hitting milestone ages. They want more from their work. They're hitting a big number birthday. And they want to develop clarity about their natural strengths, what their next adventure might look like. In this series, you'll hear me ask my guests questions to dig deeply into the stories that shaped their lives, stories that uncover patterns and may unveil insights into dissatisfaction, and also where their strengths lie and where they found and continue to find joy. This podcast's intention is to have listeners think of their own related stories and how they tell them, discovering the internal messages that are limiting their success, and discovering how to shift their stories so they become positive life lessons to move them forward. If you're curious about what it would be like to work with me, visit elkinsconsulting.com and schedule a one-time 90-minute StrengthsFinder session.
I have been looking forward to this for months. For our listeners, today we have Lea Centauri on Your Stories Don't Define You, How You Tell Them Will. And I met Lea because she has a voice lesson called the Voicedance program. And my niece, who is 7 years old, took a few of these lessons with Lea. And my sister fell in love with her. And when my niece decided that she was good with 3 or 4 lessons and she was done, because she's 7, my sister said, "Sarah, I want to introduce you to this woman. She's a vocal coach and you are going to love her." And as she would say, everything happens for a reason. That's what I say. It's part of our life lesson. And today I get to interview Lea on the podcast, and I couldn't be more excited. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me. It's going to be fun.
It is. Well, yeah. I knew I had to invite you after a few of your little snippets of stories during our lessons. And one of the reasons I was so enamored with these stories is because the way you share them really puts the detail in it in a way that is unexpected. And I felt like I was right there in your auntie's kitchen with you when you got to meet Louis Armstrong and his wife, Red, and you were just a little girl. And I felt like I was transported to that space and time. So let's just dive in, because I want to hear a lot of your stories, as many as we can cram into a 30-minute conversation.
Great.
But let's start with the question I always ask my guests, which is, can you share something about yourself that most people probably don't know about you?
Okay, so I gave it some thought. And this is the first thing. Let's start at the beginning. I think when I was born, I must have sung a note. Because my mother said, when the doctor handed me to her, Dr. Rosenthal handed me to her, he said, "She's a singer." So in my mind, I imagine I must have, arriving, I must have gone with the, that used to spank the baby, and I was going, ah. It must have been immediate, the music. Mm-hmm. And I took that story because I had my astrology chart done once, and the astrologist said to me, "You've always been a singer." And I kind of feel that, which is why my life kind of segued into teaching. But actually, I started out as a jazz singer.
I'm not surprised at all.
Yeah, it's funny, kind of like it moved to something else. And because in life, you're not always in control. You do the creative thing, but you cannot control the outcome. That's not what it's about. It's not about that. It's like catching air.
When did you learn that? Like, was there a moment when you might not have known it at the time, but when you look back, When did you know that you can't control the outcome? You just have to surrender yourself to that creative spirit that hits you.
That's a recent revelation. I kid you not. Oh no. I think throughout my life, I moved, my decisions were based on intuition, some wisdom, some things that my father told me, but you make a decision in the moment. You kind of, everything that then you make the decision, and desire is always there. Mm-hmm. I have this picture of life, my life, and I desire it. It's good. And there you are.
Right.
So it begins that way. That's part of being young. Mm-hmm. The palette, the color of the palette is clear. All the colors are there, but it's without form. Mm-hmm. And as you live, then you take orange and red, and sometimes it's dark. It ain't happening.
Oh yes, I've been there multiple times.
Yes, sometimes it's like doesn't, but that's so the color. Other than that, you wouldn't even know you were in color.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah, you have to have the opposites. That's how you know. Mm-hmm. You have to fail to know success. It's never going to be success. It can't be that. What does that mean? That's imaginary anyway. Mm-hmm.
It is. And one of the things that struck me as we worked together was the spirituality behind how you teach. And I know that I just recently had somebody, after a workshop that I presented, that I facilitated with young adults from Serve America. So AmeriCorps, Vista, I was working with these young adults. One of them came up to me afterward and he said, "That was just so great." And I said, I really appreciate hearing that. And I've heard it from a few of you. What specifically made it great? What was it that made you feel like this was a really good session? And he said, your passion for the topic. You live this storytelling passion and how it affects our internal messages and how we're perceived. And it wasn't until I heard him say that back in late March that I realized that's what I was experiencing when you taught me in our lessons. So tell me, when you think about the spirituality of what you have learned, do you remember a particular moment that felt like, I have a handful of musical moments that I absolutely felt like I was part of a much greater picture, something I just couldn't possibly describe or understand or explain?
Musically?
Mm-hmm. Like maybe a performance or somebody you heard singing?
I would say probably the moment I met Bobby Few when I was in Paris. Bobby Few was an incredible jazz pianist, and it took 2 years for me to meet him. They kept telling me, "Oh, you should meet him. You should meet him, Lea. You should meet him." But divine timing.
Right.
And then
you weren't ready.
I wasn't ready. Okay. And then I met him. And so what is it? It was this. Was through him that I understood the concept of jazz and of the infinite possibility of notes in the music, like what it is. Jazz musician, they never play the music the same way twice. So he'd play the song, and each night it would be a little different. He'd say to me, "Sing on this, sing on this, sing on this." In order to do that, I had to come from I would say a soulful level, the non-ego, total creativity. That's when you're immersed in it, and it's joy. If you're doing it from there, you can follow wherever it goes because you're in the same path. That this is just it. Art gives you that. Mm. Left brain, right brain. Brain is the right side. Female part of it. That. It changed everything for me. I think I understood who I was through the music with him.
How old were you then? Do you remember?
Yeah, late. I was 40.
Oh, wow. So so you're 72 now?
Yeah, 3.
73. Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I got a late start. Life, people think, you're born into the music, that's all you're going to just do that from out of the womb. Some people, but a lot of us, that's not what it is. That's not our calling.
Right.
Yes. So
because we have to experience so much before we can get to that point.
Exactly.
Like I couldn't sing soulfully in the same way at 30 that I could at 40, and much less at 50.
Exactly.
Wow. So do you remember a moment after performance with him when you just knew this is where I was meant to be, and this is the reason it took me so long to get to this path?
Yeah, I did. It's it's a little bittersweet. I mean, I kind of like, I'm like, you have to imagine how many lives I had to live in order to get there. I had to study voice. I came to Paris when I was 22. I had to go back. I studied, I got married, I had a child, I moved in Hill. It was just incredible. It was incredible. In the thing that kept me, and I want to tell you this, when every people say to me, how were you able to be okay through all of that? I want to say to you, I've been meditating for 52 years. That's something that no one knows about me. I probably should have started with that one.
That's a good one.
52 years of transcendental. Yes. But we're talking about relentless every day. Every day. Okay, so that probably was the inner thing. It's what guided me to become the teacher, and life took another course as opposed to one of fame and fortune and da-da-da-da-da. Also, 9/11 happened in Paris when I was there.
Oh.
I was in the cafe. Right. Sitting in the cafe. Yes. Sitting in the cafe with my friend Bibi. She's famous. She's from Ghana. Okay. Singer, African singer. Beautiful. And the owner of the cafe came out and said, Lea, pardon-moi, c'est un problem in Paris. There's a problem. C'est un problem in America. A problem. And so we got up and we went inside and we watched it on TV. The world ended that day. I tell you this, it changed my career. I didn't know if I wanted to talk about that, but it's relevant because everyone should know the world has it's moving, and we move within the changes. Nothing is stagnant. That happened and everything changed. I mean, I stayed 3 years after that. I went to Turkey and taught for a year at Biligi University. It was wonderful. I did a few things, but the atmosphere changed completely. The French were in tears. Mm. The jazz was like, it was different. Everything kind of died. Everyone was so hurt. I came home. That's what happened. And things changed. Then I became the teacher. Mm.
So tell me about a performance. I want to hear a story about a performance, especially with Bobby, because it sounds like he was pivotal in how you speak your music.
Okay, so Bobby Few, they play progressive jazz. Okay, so for me, I did jazz standards, but the playing of the music, the musicians, I met Archie Shepp. These are guys that are Steve Lacy. These are the old timers. All of the musicians would go to Paris to perform. Everyone went because it was non-racist. I was welcomed in France. I didn't have a color. I was the American. That's it. Huh. Everywhere I went to sing, when I went to Athens, to Greece to perform with Bobby and I, with the band. We went to Athens with the only jazz club called the Jazz Note. It was in Athens. The Americans, no color. You need to know what that feels like to walk on the planet and not have people look at you and say, oh, your complexion determines who you are. That is not true. Your story doesn't determine who you are. It's always changing. Mm-hmm. Huh. Which is the thing that you tell everyone in these podcasts, hey, guess what? And this is inspiring. We need to share that and know that life is really that. Mm-hmm. It's
yes. How we share about it. It's what we learn from it. Yeah. It's how we teach from the experience.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And grow. Wow.
I want to tell you one more interesting thing about the music thing. I grew up singing gospel music. Mm-hmm. Okay. So long story short, in my travels coming home and going back, I stopped to see my Aunt Leora. My Aunt Leora was the first person I heard sing. She sang opera. And I was a little kid and she was a singer in the family. And I would be sitting there and she'd be sitting there singing arias. The most incredible voice I had ever heard in my life. Opera. She was invited to go to France. She wouldn't go. Sometimes kids won't leave home. She was the baby in the family. She would you could not imagine that, but she sang. Okay, Lord, well, let's fast forward 30, 40 years. Okay, here I am, and I'm on my way I stopped to see her. I'm on my way back to Paris. She says to me, come, let me play some music for you. She turns on this music. It was gospel music. She says to me, do you remember this? I said, oh, yes. She says, oh, this is so beautiful. I said, I don't sing that. I'm not going to Paris to sing that. I'm going to Paris to sing jazz. Do you know the first gig I got in Paris was at the Chesterfield Cafe? And guess what it was? Singing gospel on Sunday. With all of these Americans. The most incredible. Yes. I toured France singing gospel music. Yeah. All of that happened there. And I want to tell you, the music is so moving. The African-American music is just, it's the power of it. The French people never understood what was being said. They felt the passion and the love behind what was being sung. The singer sang with all their heart, all their love. But you didn't have to understand what was exactly being, but you could see the picture. That's the power of music.
I just got a chill, partly because I remember the first time I really felt the passion behind a voice that wasn't my own. And I was in high school in chamber singers. And there was a senior who was singing O Come, Emmanuel. And she was a very passionate believer, a person of faith. And hearing her sing the beginning in her gorgeous soprano voice, walking through the auditorium to join us as chamber singers, the 7 of us on the stage, and hearing her a cappella sing that solo of the first verse of O Come Emmanuel. And I remember my eyes started to tear up. And I'm Jewish, and I didn't believe in what she was singing, but I believed in her love and her passion for this belief.
Exactly. And that's what music is about.
That's what it does.
That's what it does.
So the other time that I felt that pull of spirituality that just pops into I feel it a lot now because I sing often and I get to do harmonies with people, and harmony often is the thing that pulls me into that spiritual realm when I'm singing. But another time was when Max's bar mitzvah it was in the summer. It was June 21st. And it was just a few months after my father had died. And I remember we were in the backyard for the reception that my husband and I catered. We had about 80 people in and out of our backyard with lots of food and Mai Tais and all kinds of fun stuff. And I remember Max was worried that we would forget that it was also his birthday. So I brought out this gigantic birthday cake for dessert, happy birthday, Max, and candles. And all of our neighbors were around. But at the time, it was a very small Jewish community. So there were maybe a dozen Jewish people among these 80 that were at the party. And when I brought out the cake and I said that Max was concerned we were going to forget that it was also his birthday, his 13th birthday, everybody laughed. And then we started to sing happy birthday to him. And Leah, it was like if we had been indoors, the roof would have come off. The power of a happy birthday song, of all the songs to hear sung, but they were singing it with such love and generosity of spirit to my child. And I will never forget that feeling. I kept thinking that if we could do more things like this, even a happy birthday song, that the world would change. We would change the vibration of hate and anger.
I agree. And, he has carried that his whole life. Believe me, it's all over him.
It is. So tell me a story of when that happened to you, when you were just overwhelmed. I literally, it was everything in me not to start bawling my eyes out because it was a happy occasion. And I knew Max would be worried about me if I started crying in the moment. All I could think about was my father and how he should have been there and how he was there because of that spirituality that we embodied in the happy birthday song. So when was that moment for you? I know you've had many, but does one come to mind?
Does one come to mind? I can't think of one particular thing. But, that's interesting. If you asked me there were so many incredible moments. The birth of the baby,
right?
Was it the most incredible? His face, I couldn't believe it. The love. The first time you're in love, the first time you sing a song. I was 4, and they put the dress "Lilies of Spring." I will never forget it.
Can you sing part of it for us?
Yes. Lilies of spring, lilies of spring, Easter tidings bring, oh, beautiful lilies of spring. It was Easter.
Oh.
My first solo. And I remember, and they put me in this huge dress in church. I was at church, of course, because,
Of course, it was Easter.
African-American people's church. And my family, they were the founders of the church. So I sang that. They would sing, this kid is going to sing in the choir. But that was the first song. And then I knew I do this. Can you imagine that I never forgot the song?
I'm not surprised by that.
Oh, really?
I'm not surprised by that.
Why would you remember? To me, it's amazing that I remember, but I do. I like it was yesterday,
There are some things that are just etched. Like I remember O Come Emmanuel. It's not my song. I didn't even sing the solo. But I remember that first verse because it was a moment. It's etched in my heart, in my brain. Yeah.
Native Americans, I want to tell you another interesting story about singing. Native Americans don't sing, they chant. Okay, so my dad, his heritage they're Seminole Indians. Okay, so on Saturdays, I'm from Long Island. We had a house on the island, and behind my house, you could see the bay and woods, and beautiful there. So on Saturdays, every Saturday, he painted our faces. We wore war paint. And I remember two lines on my cheek, and on each cheek, my sister and I, and we would be in the backyard. And he would tell us that that it was the sky above and the mud below. And he would chant, and they stamp, they stamp on the earth. And he'd go, hey, I tell you, and my mother would be freaking out. Bill, what are you what are you teaching those girls? And he'd say, go away. And it was, but it had an incredible impact. It was through the chanting that I understood nature. My father introduced me to nature, the stomping on the ground. So in terms of my heart and my physical and my heart, that was how you connected yourself to the earth. So he showed me what that felt like. And in his culture, it is through the chanting. It is that. It was amazing. Every Saturday I was there. He could, with my sister and I, and he told us, and then he would show us that a bird would fly above, and he'd say to us, I can show you how the bird how the eagle sees the planet. It wasn't an eagle. He would say that because he wanted to be a storyteller. To make it really big, right?
It's probably pigeon, but it's an eagle in your mind.
So how could it show you? I'll show you now how how an eagle sees, flies and see. And we would be sitting and we could imagine that seeing everything above. Oh, amazing. Yes. But it was introduced to the sound for what is Native American music. That's the chanting and the contact with the planet. Mm-hmm. All of those tribes, all of the Indian tribes, their music begins with the earth. Yes. Interesting, isn't it? Yes.
Yes. I've had the opportunity to hear that. In Helena, there's a solstice celebration on December 21st every year. And I've had the opportunity to sing at the solstice celebration. And for the last few years that I've participated, they've also had Daniel Pocha, who is a local, well-known Native American who he leads a drum circle and they do the chanting. And as you were telling the story of your father and stomping on the ground, I could feel the energy. I could feel that rhythm through my feet, even though I wasn't the one doing it, as you were telling the story, which of course is a powerful story when you can feel it yourself. But I was thinking about how the beauty of how those can combine. The way that you present music in your teaching embodies that rhythm, that feeling of being connected to the earth, the pounding, the stomping, along with a little bit of that chanting and the way that you present it. And then we go into the notes. And I never had put that together before until you told me that story.
Oh, interesting. I never thought of it that way myself.
Well, it's just a clear indication. We embody all of our history, even when we don't know we're doing
it. Exactly. That's what it's about. It's like you become imprinted with it, Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
So when you think of your story as a long linear timeline, is there a point in it that you can point to as being just a joyful moment, maybe in performance? Because I have only been doing this professionally for about 12 years. I've performed all my life, but professionally as a musician, it's been about 12 years. And I have a few moments in those 12 years of being really in that moment. One of them is we were outside on a stage in Craig, Montana, and it had gotten dark and we were starting our last set. We weren't sure how many songs we were going to do because it seemed pretty quiet. We didn't want to outnumber the audience at that point. And we started the song White Rabbit. Grace Slick's White Rabbit. And I closed my eyes as I was listening to Bob do this kind of a Spanish guitar intro. And then they launch into the bass. Dun, dun, da, da, dun, 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 da, da, dun, 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 da, da, dun. And I remember I closed my eyes so I could really be in the moment. And I sang that first verse, one pill makes you larger. And as I opened my eyes, as I got to the second verse, I remember I have this vivid memory of people coming out of the shadow from around the stage because it's so dark, and they're coming in toward the stage like moths to a flame. And I will never forget that moment. It felt like I was exactly where I needed to be, that there was this magic of being on stage, drawing people in and sharing that energy. I wasn't the star. I was just sharing that energy. Do you have a moment like that?
I would probably say when I did a blues gig with some blues people from California, Deacon Jones. Okay, so Deacon Jones was played B3 organ. And he's noted to have played with some very, very famous people, all of who I'm not remembering at the moment, but let me say this about it. The place was called the Quai de Blues, and it was a supper club in Paris. Okay, so it's opening night, and the place is full of people. And the musicians are from Germany, and he was from the States. They were blues players, and I had never sang blues in my life. These guys taught me. No, they taught me the blues before. No, they had a couple of days to get the music together. No, I was a jazz singer. Okay, so I will never forget with the count of it was wait, and Deacon was on the B3 organ, bam, 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 and I hit it. Call me, and I was so blown, I blew myself out of the water. It was because of them. They were so incredible. You know, the band is everything. You can sing by yourself. You can stand and go, oh, and great. But them, they're like these tigers, these animals behind you. They start playing. It's a force. And they started, and I was in it. I'd never felt, and I never, no, it was them. They
were the conduit.
They were the conduit. It's who you're with.
Mm-hmm.
That it just took me over that. Even for me, I was like, and they were looking at me because I started singing like I was crazy,
like you've been doing it for your whole life.
Singing the blues, and making me stop. And I would stop. Wait, and then I started directing the band. I would turn around and I make them stop. I would go, stop, and they stop playing. And I go, I say, oh, but they had the time of their lives. I tell you, first time in my life, I had the guts to do that.
That is amazing.
It was so beautiful. Fun. We had so much fun. And of course, the French people, they loved it. Everyone was like,
What happened after that? What was your relationship? Did your relationship with Decatur change, or with Deacon Jones? Did that change?
No, because these guys were, they played with Muddy Waters. They were very famous on their own. It was an honor to be with them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely not. Archie Shepp, really? No, come sing with me. Are you kidding? Oh, yes. You think I'm that good? Good, great. I think so, but okay. You know what I mean?
I do, believe me.
Are you in your art that well that we know you holding you there.
Mm-hmm. But your relationship with you changed after that.
Yeah. Yes, it
I
did.
can hear it in your voice. I can see it in your demeanor.
Yeah.
That was a time where you realized I could do anything.
Anything. It was incredible. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. So you did a lot more blues after that, didn't you?
Oh, golly, honey. Yes.
Well,
It was, I did that in the jazz, but I did it how I sang blues like a jazz singer. Because jazz singers, it's you hear you hear these different riffs. It's not straight up. You hear, you hear it like that. Yeah. So I didn't change me. I just took me and put me in there.
Well, I immediately thought of Nina Simone.
And they loved it because you're bringing your heart, who you are there. You have to do that. Other than that, you can't hang.
No, I immediately thought of Nina Simone.
Yes.
And the other thing that I thought of, and this is a perfect place to pull this back full circle, Lea, is that you have this gospel beginning and this rhythm and chanting of the Seminole people. And then you did jazz. Yeah. So the blues, your version of the blues had to have been this unique combination of those pieces to your puzzle, those pieces of your heart. That's what you brought that night.
Yes.
History. Without the obligation and the baggage. It was informed.
Yeah. And spontaneous. Life has to be, sometimes it's the spontaneity that has the magic. That means you're in the present,
Exactly. Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is so much fun. We could go on for hours, I'm sure. But before I forget, let's make sure that people know if they want to get a hold of you or see more of your creative endeavors. I know that you've written a few books. What is that series? Can people find them?
Oh, yes. Okay. So, all right. So this is beautiful. Let me just preface this. The thing that I want to say to everyone, in your creative endeavors, you don't know what it will evolve to. There are things that you remember as a child that you will never do until you're older, that have to do with something that's part of your authenticity, your expression. The writing of the Realms books comes now because I loved fairy tales as a kid. I read everything. With the music, I was a reader as a kid, so I read fairy tales. Was my escape. I read every book in the library. I remember my dad saying to me, I said, "Dad, there's nothing else to read." He said, "Well, pick something else." I said, "No." That was all I was interested in, was fairy tales. Okay. Years later, one day I'm sitting and I'm thinking, I'm going to give my son a present. And I didn't have a lot of any money. I didn't, I was kind of broke. So I said, I think I'll write him a story. And I started writing that. That's how the Realms began. But okay, so it evolved, yes, on a fluke, So so I forgot that I knew how to write. My dad wanted me to be a journalist. He used to talk to me about it. You should write stories and da. It visits me now as an old lady. And I love it. I see me sitting and telling incredible tales. The difference is that there's no violence in the Realms. There is no murder. There's no sex. There's nothing, none of that. It is infinite possibility. In the Realms, the humans have moved past all of that, and their time is occupied in knowing what was unknown. Okay,
so where can we find these books?
Okay, so I've done the first book, and I just finished book 2, but I have to go back in. Book 1 was on Amazon, but we pulled it because it's a series, and I had to I finished book 2, and I had to go back through, and I'm look through book 1 again, because somehow or another I've become a better writer in book 2 than I was in book 1.
Of course.
And I want to say this because art, you become great at something the more you do it. It is not overnight. I don't want to fool anyone and say, oh, I just, no. I worked so hard on this, yes, it's, if you're moving into a new expression, it's going to take you a minute to tap that.
Mm-hmm.
What is creative in you?
Absolutely.
It takes a minute. So I want other just to be inspired by that for yourself. If you find that you have another ability, go there, take your time, nurture it, because you're supposed to be doing that too.
Mm-hmm.
Check that out.
So
the realm. Okay, so it's quantum physics, it's spiritual, sci-fi spirituality. Okay, so it's realms. Relative energy, light, mass, space. Okay, relative is that which is understandable by you. Energy is what our existence is in its manifestation. Light is the last thing you are and your means of travel. Mass is your first quality as stardust. Space is your location, your reality, and all you will know. Okay, so the realms are cracks in the cosmic, and the character takes these journeys, and inside the realms, it's a world. It's like, I won't say Harry Potter or Hobbit because those were violent. He discovers things that were unknown, and I'm not going to tell you what they are. Read the book.
I will definitely get a hold of
but
it.
I really believe. Okay, so it's pretty high. I mean, it's meant to make you. It's meant to. They're meant to shock you, but not in violence. Shock you in when you read something and you go, oh my God, he went through there. Oh, and he saw, like.
It sounds to me like it's aspirational. This is what we can be.
But we can be. And also because, when I looked at Netflix and all of everything is masculine, everything is violent. Humans, even when they're having fun, think it's fun to watch a movie where there's chaos and people are being slaughtered. And I mean, all of these things, that can't be it.
Mm-hmm.
That's one concept of having fun, but why has Rome traveled, because of when the gladiators, it's like a mindset. That's not all there is.
Right. How do we move on from there?
How do we move on to the infinite possibility of ourselves, which means that you can still be scared without thinking of that slaughter. Come on, you get that all we have as humans, and in terms of our creativity. So I really am on that.
Mm.
I want to write something that's going to blow your mind, and that you're going to say, "Oh, wow!" and start to change how we entertain ourselves. Yes,
it's time.
It's time.
Mm-hmm.
This is from the planet. I'm of the planet. I'm just trying to translate what she's saying to me. How about introducing this? But I had to be old to do it.
You've described yourself as old twice, and there is nothing old about this woman.
Unless
old implies wise and interesting and full of life.
Exactly. Not an age in.
No, not in a derogatory way.
Journeys around the sun.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love it. I love it. Lea, this has been such a treat, and I knew it would be. I've laughed. My eyes have teared up. I've experienced the whole plethora of emotion in the last 40 minutes of chatting with you.
Good.
Are you open to additional students in your voice dance lessons?
Absolutely would love to have new students.
All right. So
greatest joy. I'm supposed to be doing that.
Yes, you
Doing
are.
the voice with the sing. It's come do this. Be inside yourself. It's your touch with this authentic about you when you sing the note.
Mm-hmm. To express yourself in that way.
Yeah, expressing yourself. I love it. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So just so our listeners know, you don't have to go run and get a pen or quickly write a note in your phone. I will have Lea's website address on in the show notes associated with this podcast at elkinsconsulting.com. And I will also make sure you know how to get a hold of her if you choose to take her up on this offer of voice dance lessons. And before we go, I just have to ask, voice dance, where did that come from? Because I know what it feels like, but I'm curious where it came from.
Okay, so for me, dance is God in the body. Voice dance is the other side of that. It is if the divine sings, and it sings through the voice, and it's an expression of what is unseen. So it dances out of joy. When you sing, you go, you feel great. Voice dance. The dancing of the voice. When you come to voice dance, when you leave, you feel great, happy. I feel so good.
I do.
That's what you're supposed to. The voice. That's what it is at heart.
So for our listeners, I've been singing for most of my life. I took official lessons when I was in high school and college, and I hadn't taken significant lessons in voice in 30 years. And then started with Lea a few months ago, extended my range, expanded my ability to sustain notes, and mostly gave me a different way of communicating my voice. And my band has noticed a difference. And they've always been supportive. And they didn't, my first concern was, wait a minute, if you're noticing this big a difference, what was I like before? But nothing like that. That self-consciousness always pops up. But it has been a journey for sure. And I'm taking a couple months off for the summer while my schedule is kind of crazy with travel. And then I'm going back to Lea very soon, probably August or September. So I encourage you, if you're curious about this, I encourage you to reach out to her. And at a minimum, you'll have the blessing of having met her. And if you're really lucky, you'll get to spend time with her and learn more about where this voice dance comes in. And what I can say is that now I know a little bit more about your backstory. And when I think about your father stomping and chanting on the ground, I immediately think of voice dance.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
So thank you for that moment, that visual.
Thank you. It's
been wonderful.
Okay. Love you.
Now listen to me, honey, while I say, how could you tell